We are born into a profound and unsettling awareness. We know that our time here is finite, that the vibrant tapestry of our experiences, memories, and relationships will one day come to an end. This knowledge of our own mortality is perhaps the most fundamental burden of human consciousness. Faced with the abyss of non-existence, humanity has, across cultures and millennia, crafted a story of profound hope, a single concept designed to defy death itself. It is the idea that we are more than just our physical bodies. It is the belief that within each of us resides an immortal, non-physical essence that is our true self, a core that will survive the decay of our flesh and continue into another form of existence. We call it the soul. This belief in an immortal soul is one of the most widespread and deeply held ideas in human history. It is the foundation of countless religions, the promise of an afterlife, and the comforting assurance that the bonds of love are not severed by the grave. It feels intuitively true. We speak of our bodies as something we have, not something we are. We feel like a pilot inside a machine, a ghost within the shell. But what if this core belief, this anchor against the tide of oblivion, is not a revealed truth, but another of humanity's great inventions? What if the soul is not a pre-existing entity we discover, but a concept we constructed out of fear, hope, and a profound misunderstanding of our own minds? This video is an investigation into that invention, a journey to uncover the human origins of our invented immortality. Our search for the soul's origins begins, as many philosophical inquiries do, in ancient Egypt. The Egyptians possessed one of the most complex and detailed conceptions of the soul in the ancient world. They did not believe in a single, unified essence, but in a composite self made of many parts. There was the Ka, a life force or spiritual double that lived on in the tomb and required offerings of food and drink. There was the Ba, often depicted as a human-headed bird, which represented one's personality and could travel between the world of the living and the dead. And there was the Ak, the transfigured, immortal spirit that ascended to the stars to live among the gods. Their entire funerary practice, from mummification to the construction of vast pyramids, was an elaborate technology designed to preserve these components and ensure a successful journey to the afterlife. For the Egyptians, the soul was not an abstract concept. It was a complex entity that required careful maintenance even after death. It was the ancient Greeks, however, who would take these nascent ideas and forge them into the philosophical framework that has dominated Western thought for centuries. In the early world of Homer, the concept of the psyche was much like the Hebrew Sheol, a mere breath or shade that departed for a gloomy, uninteresting existence in Hades upon death. It was Plato who revolutionized this idea, elevating the soul to a status of supreme importance. For Plato, the soul was not just a life force, it was an eternal, immaterial, and perfect entity trapped temporarily in a flawed physical body. He believed the soul existed before birth in a heavenly world of forms, a realm of perfect ideals, and that our life on earth was a shadow, a prison from which the soul longed to escape and return to its pure, original state. Plato's philosophy, often called dualism, created a stark division between the immortal, noble soul and the corrupt mortal body. This was a radical and powerful idea that solved many problems. It explained our inner conflict between our rational thoughts and our base desires. It provided a powerful moral framework where the purpose of life was to purify the soul and free it from the prison of the flesh. Most importantly, it offered a definitive victory over death. The body may die, but the soul, our true self, was indestructible. This Platonic dualism, the idea of the ghost in the machine, would become the single most influential concept in the history of the soul. directly shaping the theology of the religions that were to come. When early Christianity began to spread across the Greco-Roman world, it absorbed Platonic philosophy into its very DNA. Christian theologians like Origen and Augustine of Hippo took Plato's concept of an immortal, immaterial soul and fused it with biblical teachings. The soul became the eternal component of humanity, created in God's image, the entity that would face divine judgment and experience either eternal reward in heaven or eternal punishment in hell. The Christian promise was not just that the soul survived death, but that at the end of time, the body itself would be resurrected and reunited with the soul, creating a complete, glorified person for eternity. This synthesis of Hebrew resurrection beliefs with Greek soul philosophy created a powerful and enduring vision of personal, immortal life after death. For centuries, this dualistic view of a non-physical soul inhabiting a physical body reigned almost unchallenged. It was woven into the fabric of art, politics, and our very language. But the scientific revolution, which had evicted the gods from the gaps in our understanding of the cosmos, would eventually turn its gaze inward to the last great frontier, the human mind. The French philosopher René Descartes, himself a dualist, famously wrestled with the mind-body problem. If the soul is a non-physical thinking thing, and the body is a physical, non-thinking thing, how do they interact? How can an immaterial ghost pull the levers of a physical machine? Descartes speculated that the point of connection was the pineal gland in the brain, a guess that, while creative, had no scientific basis. This interaction problem would become the Achilles heel of dualism. Modern neuroscience has relentlessly attacked this weak point, not by disproving the soul with a single experiment, but by systematically explaining the very functions once attributed to it. We used to believe the soul was responsible for our personality, our memories, our emotions, and our consciousness. Yet, neuroscience has demonstrated with overwhelming evidence that all of these things are directly tied to the physical processes of the brain. A brain injury can radically alter a person's personality. Alzheimer's disease can erase a lifetime of memories by destroying neural connections. Chemical imbalances can profoundly change our emotional states. Every aspect of what we consider our self is contingent on the health and structure of our physical brain. Consider the famous case of Phineas Gage, a 19th century railroad worker who survived an accident where a large iron rod was driven completely through his head, destroying much of his brain's frontal lobe. He lived, but he was no longer Gage. His friends described him as a different person, impulsive, profane, and unreliable, a complete reversal of his former personality. If the soul is a separate, unchanging essence, how could a physical injury so profoundly change the very core of who a person is? Cases like this strongly suggest that our personality, our character, is not the property of an immaterial soul, but an emergent property of our brain's complex wiring. Neuroscience has also demystified experiences that were once considered proof of a spiritual dimension. Near-death experiences, with their common elements of tunnels, lights, and feelings of peace, are often cited as evidence of the soul leaving the body. But scientists can now replicate many of these sensations. Lack of oxygen to the brain, for example, can cause tunnel vision and feelings of euphoria. Electrical stimulation of specific parts of the brain can induce out-of-body experiences. The feeling of a presence in the room can be triggered by specific magnetic fields applied to the temporal lobes. These findings do not necessarily mean every such experience is just a brain state, but they demonstrate that our brains are fully capable of generating profound, seemingly spiritual experiences without any need for a non-physical explanation. The ghost is being explained by the machine. This leads us to the final redoubt of the soul, consciousness itself. This is the hard problem. We can explain how the brain processes information, but why does it feel like something to be us? Why is there a subjective, first-person experience of seeing red or feeling sadness? Some philosophers and theologians argue that this subjective awareness, this inner movie, is the soul itself, a phenomenon that physical matter can never produce. They argue that science can only ever describe the objective functions of the brain, never the subjective reality of the mind. In this final, most profound gap in our understanding, the soul makes its last stand. But even here, science is making progress. Neuroscientists like Anil Seth propose that consciousness is not a single, mysterious property, but a collection of biological processes. Our sense of self, he argues, is a form of controlled hallucination generated by our brain to make sense of the world and regulate the body. It is a predictive model of reality, a story the brain tells itself about itself. While this doesn't fully solve the hard problem, it frames consciousness not as an inexplicable mystery, but as a complex biological function we are just beginning to understand. Just as with the origin of the universe, this gap in knowledge is not evidence for the supernatural, but a frontier for scientific inquiry. If the soul is not a pre-existing entity, why did we invent it? The answer lies in our powerful human psychology. We are storytelling creatures who crave narrative and purpose. The idea of a soul provides a satisfying narrative arc for our lives, a beginning, a middle, and a life after death. It also satisfies our innate theory of mind, our tendency to see intentions and minds everywhere. Most powerfully, it provides a profound comfort against our two greatest fears: the fear of death and the fear of meaninglessness. The belief that we are immortal souls gives us hope that we will be reunited with loved ones and that our existence has a cosmic, eternal significance. The soul is the ultimate psychological coping mechanism. To let go of the idea of an immortal soul can feel terrifying. It can feel like accepting that this life is all there is and that the universe is ultimately indifferent to our fate. But this realization can also be profoundly liberating. If this life is our only one, it becomes infinitely more precious. Every moment, every relationship, every act of kindness is imbued with a significance it would not have if it were merely a dress rehearsal for eternity. Our meaning is not handed to us from a cosmic source. It is something we create, right here and now, with the people around us. Our legacy is not an ethereal spirit, but the impact we have on the world and the memories we leave in the hearts of others. Furthermore, abandoning the dualism of soul and body can lead to a more integrated and compassionate view of humanity. It encourages us to take our physical and mental health seriously, seeing them not as distractions from a spiritual journey, but as the very foundation of our well-being. It can foster a deeper empathy for those who struggle with mental illness or addiction, seeing them not as people with a weak will or a corrupted spirit, but as individuals grappling with complex neurobiological conditions. By letting go of the ghost in the machine, we can learn to better care for the machine itself and for all the other machines around us. The story of the soul is a testament to the power of the human imagination and our unyielding hope in the face of oblivion. From the complex spiritual anatomy of the Egyptians to Plato's perfect ideal, trapped in flesh, to the modern notion of a psychological essence, we have relentlessly sought to define a part of ourselves that death cannot touch. But the evidence from neuroscience and philosophy suggests this immortal self may be a beautiful and comforting story, not a scientific reality. The truth may be that we are not souls that have a body, but bodies that have a mind. We are the astonishingly complex emergent product of billions of years of evolution. We are the universe made conscious for one brief, spectacular moment, and perhaps that is miracle enough.